Hi there, and welcome to Enterprise AI Defenders, a show that highlights how enterprise security leaders are using innovative technologies to stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. In each episode, Fortune 500 CISOs share how AI has changed the threat landscape, real-world examples of modern attacks, and the role AI will play in the future of cybersecurity. I'm Evan Reiser, the founder and CEO of Abnormal AI.
And I'm Mike Britton, the CIO of Abnormal AI. Today on the show, we're bringing you a conversation with Yaron Levi, Chief Information Security Officer at Dolby Laboratories. Dolby is a global leader in immersive audiovisual experiences, known for pioneering sound and imaging technologies that power everything from blockbuster films to next-generation consumer devices. There are three interesting things that stood out to me in the conversation with Yaron. First, Yaron emphasizes that the root causes of most breaches haven't changed in decades. Unpatched systems, poor asset inventory, and weak access controls. What's changed is the scale and speed of failure as companies rush to adopt cloud and AI. Second, Yaron believes that security can no longer behave as a gatekeeper. At Dolby, where innovation cycles are fast and teams move quickly, security's real value comes from enabling calculated risk, embedding with business units, and making cybersecurity a shared responsibility across 3,000 employees. And finally, Yaron believes AI's real near-term power is in wiping out the technical debt that slows defenders down. For Dolby, Agentic AI is a way to scale good habits and eliminate human error, turning long-term problems into automation wins.
All right. Well, Yaron, first of all, thanks so much for making time. I know Mike and I are really looking forward to chatting with you today. Maybe you should give our audience a bit of background. Tell us a little about kind of your career, maybe how you got to where you are today.
So, Yaron Levi, thank you for having me on this show. Happy to be here. Currently, I'm the CISO at Dolby. I've been here at Dolby for nearly 5 years. Before that, I was the CISO at Blue Cross Blue Shield here in Kansas City. And my career has been in just different industries. I worked at healthcare, Cerner Corporation, big healthcare IT company, now is part of Oracle. I was there for nearly 3 years. I was part of Intuit, part of eBay, one of the 22 research fellows for the Cloud Secure Alliance. So if you like or hate the CCM or the CIQ, I was the part of the team who wrote that. And then further on in my career, just different roles, software engineer, architect, different things. So I did multiple things, worked across multiple countries or across multiple countries, which is always fun and amazing to me to work across cultures. So,
cybersecurity is a hard job, right? You got late night calls, you got criminals trying to hack in your business, right? It gets, the threat landscape changes every day. There's new technology every day. Obviously IT architecture has never changed faster. You've been doing it for a long time and you're still, alive and mostly sane, right? What motivates you, right? What keeps you going? What inspires you? Why, you're so experienced, so accomplished, why not go to someone else, right? You've stuck here. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about kind of what drives you.
I think one thing about cybersecurity in general, it's the mission. I think more than anything else, again, being in IT, being in, also on the business side. But when I really started to work and focus on cyber, I found my calling or find my home, if you will. One, it's the mission. I think it's a mission that is, worth fighting for, worth doing, working at. But the other side of it is the people. I haven't seen any other community of people like that, in any other profession. I mean, not CIOs, not CFOs. I mean, who wants to hang out with them? But when you go to security side of this house, you go to conferences. I mean, different meetups that we have. It's a big difference, and it's awesome community. You can always reach out to somebody if you need help, if you have questions. There's always somebody who's going to have your back. And that's how we do it. That's what I like. I think it's at the community.
When you came to Dolby, were there things that translated well from other industries, other companies? Are there things that you found that were very different in how Dolby operated versus your last stop? How do you kind of approach that when you change industries, change companies on what works and what doesn't work when running a security program?
Every company is different and every industry is different. And sometimes, companies within the same industry and they also, operate differently. But I think the common theme across all of them, yes, you have some different regulations and maybe, one industry is subject to this and the other one is subject to that. But I think at the end of the day, what's common to everybody, it's the people. And, everybody have the same challenges, the same challenges internally. Everybody kind of fighting for budgets, everybody fighting for attention, for priorities. And really, how do you navigate all of that by finding, what's important to them, what's important to the business, and then what can you do from a security perspective, to support and help that. And I think that's the theme, right? Because if you're in healthcare, so, the most important thing is your member or your patient or, whatever the case may be there, right? And if you think about the mission of healthcare, they were looking to treat patients. So we're looking, to treat people. So that's the most important thing for the business. Okay, so what do we do? How do we support that? How do we enable that? When I was at eBay, for example, we had a lot of people who are making living off eBay, right? They are selling their merchandise or, whatever they do, auctions, whatnot. So there's a lot of hobbies, but a lot of people who make living. Well, if the company is, delivering on helping people to make living, that's what's important to them. That's what's important for us, to continue and protect that. So at the end of the day, I think it's always kind of the same thing. First of all, what's the business mission? What's important for the business? What can go wrong that will prevent the business from accomplishing its mission? And then what can we do to help so that they can continue to deliver their mission? And that's, I think, it's pretty common to like every industry. Maybe the implementation is a little bit different, but the same thing. But ultimately, it's like the same thing for everybody. Everybody suffer from the same challenges, from the same lack of budgets, from the same technical debt. From the same priorities. From everything else, right? It's just how do you navigate through all of that?
And do you feel like maybe some organizations or some industries are better at pushing the forefront on new technology, or some more laggard? Kind of, do you feel like you've seen differences there? Or?
Yeah, it's definitely different. You think about healthcare organizations, they tend to be a little bit more behind for many different reasons. You think about every technology, SaaS, Bay Area, they're trying to stay like more forefront. They're trying to be more innovative. So yes, it's different from organization to organization. Can't tell you that one is better than the other. Each one has its pros and cons. Staying on the bleeding edge has a lot of advantages, but also a lot of challenges as well. And we don't grow like white hair for nothing. So your mileage may vary. It just depends on the organization.
Well, I think it's kind of unique about your experience outside of kind of your day jobs, right? You've also worked with a lot of venture capitalists and startups, right? And you spend a lot of time kind of thinking about like what's the cutting edge of stuff, right? The new technologies, the new kind of threat landscapes. What are like the three big areas in cybersecurity that no one's talking enough about, right? Whether it's on the threat landscape or the transformation, like, if there's a CISOs listening out there, what are like the three things you'd say, hey, here's three areas like you really got to spend some more time, put some more attention?
It's always the same thing. So if you think about, take the Verizon DBIR. They have been publishing it for 10, 15 years now. Take OWASP Top 10. Hasn't changed over the last, 25 years, right? And so on and so forth. Mandate are publishing, reports, threat reports, every year and so on. And if you zoom out and you look at all the data, what you always see is almost always the same thing. How compromise or how breaches happen. Unpatched systems, misconfigurations, compromised credentials, RDP, open RDP, the RDP that somebody left out there, right? It's always the same things, right? And somewhat we don't learn or we don't move away from that. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, so why is that? Like why we keep kind of failing to the same, for the same things, right? And I would argue that for the most part, all of those cracks, if you will, that we have, it's a form of technical debt. And it's a form of technical debt that has been accumulated more and more over time, mainly due to what I call like lack of operational discipline by IT, by engineering, by others, and so on. But by and large, this is not security problems. And I don't mean by that is like, oh, we don't care, it's not my issue. These are security risks. And these are the things that, again, we're trained and we're fighting very, very hard to defend and continuously reduce that risk. But for the most part, if most organizations, will properly invest, the time, the effort, know what your inventory is, like know where applications are, properly manage your access, probably manage your network. Things like that. Probably 78% of our job is going to be gone. So then you have to ask yourself, so why don't they do that? Well, because it's hard. I mean, it's hard, it's time consuming, it's expensive, right? And to get it right, I mean, and the more and more complexity that we see over the years, I mean, this, thing called cloud that was introduced 15-ish years ago. What did that do to our industry? And then virtualization and Kubernetes, and now we have agents and AI, right? I mean, so the complexity is continuously growing. And to do all of that at speed and scale, super, super difficult. But ultimately, I mean, the concepts are the same. Do you know what your inventory is? Back then it was devices, then cloud workloads and virtual machines and other Kubernetes or whatnot. And now it's like agents. Okay, if we're going to suck at managing the agent's inventory the same way we sucked at managing, device inventory, we are going to have a big problem. So essentially, it's focused on those foundational, that operational discipline, kind of the same way. I think it applies the same across the board. Not saying it's easy; it's super hard. But I think that's a lot of the focus that we need to bring in, a lot of the focus that we have to have.
Bad guys don't seem to be burdened by the same issues. They move fast. They are latching on to things like generative AI and automation and things that they can move at the speed of machines now. Do you think it's going to create a bigger gap with security teams where the attackers are moving fast and able to scale faster with fewer humans and more automation? Is it only going to be widening that gap? And if so, how do we fix that?
So yes, I think on one hand, it may lower the bar for entry, and therefore we may see an increase in more attacks or potential attacks, or whatnot. But the other side of it is, you said you live in the Midwest, and I would assume that your house is mostly wood and sheetrock. And the front door on your house probably have a deadbolt and, have a lock, but it's not a very difficult lock to open if you really want to, right? More than likely, I don't need a cruise missile to send through your door to open it and just get into your house. So why would I spend money and effort on a cruise missile, which is really hard, and you have to have all the materials and everything else, if I just kind of walk in with a lockpick set and just going to open the door, right? So I think the analogy is kind of the same. If you go back and we say, look, we're still failing at the same things: inventory management, configuration management, patch management, access control, network segmentation, etc. Do we really need much AI, to help break into that? No, the bad guys have been successful every year, even without it. So I guess the truth is probably we're somewhere in the middle, right? I think we need to be able to embrace and figure out how we can automate more, how we can leverage those technologies, to help us defend better, and really tackle the technical debt mountain that we have that was so difficult for us, to deal with, quote unquote, manually. Maybe with some AI, agentic AI, maybe we have some chances, to deal with it better.
One of the challenges we face in the industry right now is that there's way more tools that are more accessible, more powerful for criminals, right? ChatGPT is one of them. There's other ones. Some are AI, some are not. So what does that mean for the industry, right? We're kind of still losing, right? There's probably more breaches from phishing this year than last year, right? It's kind of the same stuff. Everyone's working hard, right? But we're all kind of short strapped, low on budget, low on headcount. But the criminals are getting, all these tools. While we have to make sure to never get it wrong, they just have to get it right once, right? And so what does that mean for kind of the fate of cybersecurity? Are we on a dead end path, or what's the opportunity for the good guys to use these tools? What would be your kind of thoughts and advice there to, maybe any CISOs listening?
For me, it goes back to two things. First of all, we're talking about the business. We're talking about business goals. What's important to the business, right? And once we understand that, threat model that, how do we know how things can go wrong so that it will prevent the business from, delivering its job, delivering its mission? This is where you need to start. So if you think about it, again, in a very pragmatic way, right? You go to the business, you say, okay, what are the goals? Then I can model, okay, what can go wrong? And now that I know what can go wrong, how can it go wrong? And now that I know what can go wrong and how it can go wrong, that's where I put my expertise, for the cybersecurity professional. Now I need to think about controls, i.e. countermeasures, right? So specific controls that are relevant, to what I need. I don't care. They can map to NIST, to ISO, to whatever you want. There are many frameworks out there. They're all fabulous. Just use whatever kind of writes for you. And now that I know what can go wrong, how it can go wrong, what controls, i.e. countermeasures I have, now I need capabilities, people, process, technology to accomplish that control. And this is all theoretical exercise. And maybe now I am going to end up with a list of like 700 things, right? Now I go back to the business and say, okay, business, how much can you afford? How much budget do I have? What can you let me? And I need to keep in mind that, the business by and large doesn't exist to be secure. They exist, to deliver a mission, and they have to take risks to deliver their mission. So based on that risk, based on that budget, based on whatever, the business can afford, they say, oh, you can have so much money. Okay, cool. With so much money, I can, out of the 700 things, I can do 5. And everything else, the 695 things, these are the gaps that we're managing. I think where we often see or we run into challenges is that organizations by and large, are not very proactive about cybersecurity. Oftentimes, if I look at some of the CISOs roles that I have before and other CISOs that I know, oftentimes it's like there was a trigger. There was a trigger that brought the company to build security, to bring a CISO, whatever, right? Customers were asking for it. They had a breach. Something. But there is a trigger. Okay, for whatever reason, fine.
The CEO read some random article on the internet and forwarded it around.
Could be. Gartner told him, whatever. But could be something, right? There was a trigger. But now when there's a trigger, it's very reactionary. So it's like, oh, there's a problem. Let me bring somebody, and I just want them to make the problem kind of go away. And then, okay, he or she did like a great job, building a program, building a practice, building security. The problem kind of went away. Now they don't want to hear about it. So make sure it's secure, but don't bother us too much, right? I'm exaggerating a little bit, but by and large, you see that with a lot of organizations, as opposed to, this is not an IT problem. This is not a security problem. This is part of the business mission. It's how do we help the business take risk, and how do we help the business manage risk? And that dialogue has to be there. That dialogue, the partnership has to be there with the business. And as a CISO, my role is to spend a lot of time integrating and talking to different people in the business.
What are the next 3 attacks, right, that someone's going to face, right, that they're maybe not expecting? And like maybe you can kind of give the verbal triggers now so you don't have to experience the real thing. But if you had to do like the 1 tweet or like 3 tweets, what would be like the 3 things you think people should be thinking about and getting ahead of and being proactive versus waiting for that, reflexive response?
It's the same things. Somebody is going to not have MFA. Somebody is going to leak their credential. Somebody is going to give, their credentials away. There's going to be some system out there that somebody forgot about. There's going to be tons of agents running around with not proper OAuth and everything else there that people forget about.
Are there any of those that you mentioned that you feel like where the risk is accelerating maybe disproportionately due to AI, where it's like, hey, this one's like, it's a problem now, but it's about to kind of shoot up vertical, right? Like any areas you think are particularly worrisome?
I think so. Data leakage, if you will, and whatever you kind of put into AI, that's one area. So kind of the insider threat of that. The other one is the proliferation of various, let's call it AI or agentic AIs, agentic AI, capabilities that, again, everybody wants to go and everybody wants to do that, and there's a great promise there. But let's not forget, it's a very, very new technology. Until 2 years ago, nobody even heard about ChatGPT. Now everybody kind of using it, right? I think we definitely would like to adapt, but we also have to be mindful about the risks and how we address them. And, if it's difficult enough for us today to manage, access controls and things like that, and the inventory at scale of, let's say, virtual machines or virtual components, and so on. Think about the work of agentic AI when actually now it's doing even more stuff almost independently, right? So how are we going to manage that? So I think that's going to accelerate. I think a lot of it is going to accelerate, not necessarily because of the bad guys, but mostly because of part of it is because of the hype, and nobody wants to get left behind. And the businesses, kind of hear the great promise of doing more with less. So sure, definitely, they want to pursue that. But again, the question, how do you do that? You're just going to go all in, put the blinders on, don't care what's going to happen, take off the rear view mirror and just kind of drive into the traffic. Okay, you can do that. There's risk involved. But I think these are the things that we're going to start seeing more and more.
We only got about 10 minutes left. So at the end of the episode, I'd like to do a bit of a lightning round where we ask you questions, and we're trying to look for like the 1 tweet response to questions that are kind of unfair to ask for a short answer to. But Mike, do you want to kick it off for us?
Sure. So what one piece of advice would you give a security leader stepping into their very first CISO role? Maybe it's something they might overestimate or underestimate about the role.
It's focused on building relationship, and it's focused on the people. Really focused on building trusting relationship and building the trust, with your peers, with the people above you, people, below you, all across, and find what's important to them and focus on what's important to them. That's probably half of your success in that role.
What's your advice for maybe other CISO security leaders out there to make sure that, or to help them stay up to date with like the latest technology, specifically around how AI is affecting cyber?
So definitely there's a lot of sources out there you can learn from. Actually, you can use AI to learn from, to help you kind of learn. And that's how I do it. I leverage some tools to help me synthesize information and read information. Talk to your peer. I think a lot of that conversations that is happening, with the community, with people in the community. Hey, what are you guys are doing about this? What are you guys are doing about that? What do you use for, this technology, that technology? For this service, what have you? Really kind of learn from others and, share with others also what you do. That's, how we learn.
So on the more personal side, what's a book that you've read that's had a big impact on you and why?
The Psychology of Money. It's one of the recent ones that I read. I don't know. I'm reading a bunch of different books and I sometimes read like 3 or 4 at the same time. So I'm reading a book about Buddhism now. I'm reading a book about intelligence. Like I said, I just finished the Psychology of Money. And I just was driving back home earlier and just started to listen to Harry Potter again for the 79th time. So I don't know. Just depends on the mood.
What do you think will be true about the future of AI and cybersecurity that most people consider science fiction?
I think there's definitely a hype. And I think there's definitely way bigger hype at the moment of what will happen and what will not happen, and so on. I don't think AI is this God all-knowing thing that will eventually kind of give us all the answers and lead us to salvation. I think by and large, AI is great in synthesizing data, recognizing patterns, but it doesn't have a gut feel. And I think a lot of, what we do as humans oftentimes depends on the gut feel, even though, all the instruments, all the data, everything will tell you, don't go there. And despite all of that, we are, because we have a different gut feel. And that's how we make progress. That's how we innovate. That's how we do different things. So I think that, ingenuity, just something that's kind of built into us, in such a way that I'm hoping that, we can leverage AI for the things that we've struggled with for a long time. Again, technical debt, all the boring stuff, all the mountains of things that, we struggled with, and help us to take care of that so that we can be more innovative, that we can be more, find those different things that, or go to the places that we were locked from going from before. I don't think we can imagine how much AI can potentially unlock in the future, the same way we couldn't imagine Uber, rideshare, back in 2008-9 when cloud came out, right? Nobody thought about it, but a lot of things kind of happened because of cloud, and therefore, can we imagine our life now without it? So I don't think we can really imagine what an AI is going to generate from us 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Hopefully, we're not going to destroy ourselves between now and then, but I think it will definitely unlock a lot of interesting things for us in the future.
I love that answer. Yaron, thanks so much for making time to chat with us today. Looking forward to maybe a part 2 episode in the future, but thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That was Yaron Levi, Chief Information Security Officer at Dolby Laboratories. I'm Mike Britton, the CIO of Abnormal AI.
And I'm Evan Reiser, the founder and CEO of Abnormal AI. Thanks for listening to Enterprise AI Defenders. Please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Learn more about how AI is transforming cybersecurity at enterprisesoftware.blog. This show is produced by Josh Muir. See you next time.